It has been 6 weeks since my husband passed away, and there were so many things that I was not warned about because no one's talking about it, and I don't want you to be blindsided like I was blindsided. Welcome back to Senior Sparkle. I am Trisha. I am so glad you're here. Yes, after someone passes, you have all kinds of information about grief and how to grieve and what it's going to feel like, but what they don't tell you is the shocking side of death. This is what I call the business side of things, and the world just keeps going, and we have to keep going with these things. So let's go ahead and step back a moment to the day my husband passed, and I'll take you through the business side of things so that you too can be prepared. So my husband passed away while he was in the hospital, and I have absolutely nothing but kind things to say about the doctors and nurses and his care team. Everybody was so kind, and just so you know, my husband had been in and out of the hospital, so I knew a lot of the doctors and the nurses, and whenever he would have to come back, they're like, oh, he's back. It was kind of like going home, I guess, back to the hospital because they knew us. So that I have nothing bad to say about the hospital. So as soon as my husband passes away, they of course give me their condolences, and they leave me in the room with my husband, and they tell me take as long as I need, but they would like to move his body to the morgue within 2 hours. So take as long as you need, basically, as long as it doesn't go past 2 hours. So I sat there for 2 hours holding his hand, and about 30 minutes before my 2 hours was up, my daughter arrived and my son-in-law, and I had told them they didn't have to come because it was about an hour. They were about an hour away and leaving work and all that. I said, no, it's okay. You don't have to come. There's nothing for you to do. He's passed, maybe tomorrow. And they said no, they were coming, which, looking back, I'm so glad they did. A really good friend of mine also showed up about 30 minutes before I had to leave. Now, this was a godsend because what I did not plan on is how hard it was going to be to leave his bedside, knowing, that was the last time I would see him, hold his hand, be able to kiss him goodbye. And what I didn't think about was all his personal belongings that had to be gathered in the hospital, and taken out to the car. And I was so thankful because my son-in-law just took it and took care of all of that. So after the 2 hours had passed and it was time for me to go, that was the hardest thing. I didn't anticipate how hard it was going to be, but it was very, very hard. I actually left, and my husband would always laugh at me because whenever I would say goodbye to my children, like after we'd go to dinner or something, I would just always kiss them goodbye, and then I would always go back for a second kiss. And I'm sure he was laughing at me that day too. Or smiling down, one of the two. Because after I left and shut the door and told the nurses and everybody that I was leaving, I had to go back for one more kiss. Just one more. And I did. I went back, kissed him goodbye one more time, and told him how much I loved him. And I'll miss him. And I walked out of the hospital. Thankfully, my daughter was there. She drove me home. I thought I was okay to drive home, and she's like, I don't think so. And there were moments where, looking back, I don't remember. So it was probably best that I didn't drive myself home. And she drove us home. And my son-in-law went to go get us some dinner because it was dinner time. And as we were coming home, my childhood friend who had showed up at the hospital texted me and said that he had made an appointment for me for the next day at noon to meet at a funeral home. He was going to pick me up and take me to a funeral home. And at first I was like, my goodness, like my husband just passed. Like, why are we talking about this? And, but I agreed, and he did say, if you're not ready to go, I understand. But I went ahead and I agreed. I figured he would be there to help me and, support me. So I might as well do it with him than by myself. So the next morning, not even 24 hours later, my friend picks me up and we go out to the funeral home. We hadn't even made it inside the funeral home when I get a phone call from the hospital. And these phone calls, it was very businesslike. It was very kind. The guy was kind. He was nice. But it was just matter of fact. It was business for him. It was a job that he had to do. He needed to know, do I have a funeral home? When am I picking my husband's body up from the morgue? All these things. And I was like, oh my goodness, it hasn't even been 24 hours. So I assured him that I was already at a funeral home and I was going to have to get back to him once I secured the funeral home. And he was kind, and my friend was there, took down all the numbers that I needed to call once I got the funeral home to let them know who would be picking up the body and all these things. And that part was actually really shocking to me because it hadn't even been 24 hours and the hospital's already calling me like, do you have a funeral home? What if my friend hadn't have made that appointment? I would have still probably been laying in bed crying. I don't know if he hadn't have pushed me a little bit to go to the funeral home. So it was good that he did that. So now it's time, to get out of the car and go into the funeral home. And I don't know what happened exactly. I know I stepped out of the car and my feet were on the ground, but I kind of blacked out for a moment and I fell back into his car door. And he was like, oh my goodness, what happened? Like, did you miss the step? Because he's got a big old SUV. And I was like, no, my feet are on the ground. I just blacked out briefly. And I could feel myself. I was very unstable on my feet. And I've never experienced this before. So we go inside and the funeral home person was very kind, but she seemed very like a used car salesman. She was like sales pitchy, we've got the $20,000 casket. We got this, how much do you love your loved one? Do you want to spend? And I mean, I'm not a wealthy person. And I was like, I don't know. I want to do nice, but I don't have a budget like that. $10,000 just for a casket. That wasn't including everything else. So, then after she writes down everything that I want, she says she's going to leave us there for a moment and she's going to leave, to see about getting us a discount. She left us there for such a long, long time. And this is a strategy I know used car dealers do. It's called sunk cost fallacy. So the longer they make you sit there and wait, the more you feel inclined to just buy it because you've wasted so much time. And I told my friend, I was like, I'm not liking this. I just didn't have a good feeling about that funeral home. And I asked him if it'd be okay if we went to another one, the one that my mom had used. And he said, sure. So she comes back, and after leaving us sit for like 30 minutes while she tried to get us a discount, she came back with a $250 discount. And I mean, it's not like $250 discount off a $500 purchase. We're talking $250 off of a thousands and thousands of dollar purchase. It was like nothing. She gave us change. So I thanked her, and luckily my business mind kicked in because at that moment she wanted me to sign releasing my husband's body to them in case, she said, in case I decide to go with them. And I was like, I didn't feel comfortable doing that. So I got a hold of myself and I said, no, if I decide, I'll come back or I'll text it to you, email it to you, whatever I have to do. So I get out. we get back outside and I called the other funeral home, and they were so kind and they said, come on over. Sure, we're here right now. We've got time. So went on over there. They were so kind, so helpful. And I knew I was at the right place when they were going over the military packages and what they would do and cover and about the flag and telling me how special the things are going to be. I knew I was at the right place when I was looking to upgrade the casket from the package that they had shown me and get a nicer casket. And the funeral home lady, she reminded me, she said, your husband's casket is going to be covered with the American flag because he's military and you won't see it. And she actually talked me out of upgrading to this very expensive, or a little bit more expensive, casket and saving that $1,000. She said, you really don't need it. This casket's very pretty and covered in the flag. It's going to look beautiful. I was like, I knew at that point I was in the right place. So I secured that funeral home, and she was very kind, and she assured me that she would walk me through all the steps to check my emails. And so I go ahead, and me and my friend, we go out to lunch, and then I check my email, and I am slammed with all this business stuff that I have to do. I need to get her clothes for my husband and any memorabilia that I want to bury with him, or photographs, or whatever I wanted to go with him. I had to get that and bring it back to her. I had to complete the death certificate. I had to give her all the information so that she could send that information over and get it processed. I had to do an obituary. I had to do the program cards and make all these decisions, all these business decisions, when all I really wanted to do was curl up in a ball and cry. I didn't want to do this business side, but I knew I had to. So each day I would just chip away, and get the things done. Within 24 hours, I had secured the funeral home that would be taking care of my husband's services. And I gave the number to the hospital, to the funeral home, and they were going to take care of all of that. They were going to make arrangements, pick up his body, and he was picked up with full honors. They covered his body bag with the American flag, which was absolutely beautiful. They sent me photos, and so much dignity and so kind, and still it's difficult to look at. But it was very nice that they gave him the honors as they picked him up from the hospital. So now that I've got a funeral home and his body's been picked up, one would think that I could rest and just begin to grieve. No, there's so much more to the business side of things to take care of. I'm not done. The funeral home needed the information for the death certificate. They needed the obituary to be written, and I had to figure out the finances to pay them, because if I used an ATM card or a credit card, they charged a processing fee of it was like $150. And I was like, oh my goodness. And yeah, that seems pretty simple, an easy fix. Just write a check. They would accept a check. The only problem is my husband always wrote our checks. I didn't have checks on my checking account. I use my ATM. I do everything electronic. And I didn't need checks. On the rare occasion that I needed a check, I would give my husband cash and he would write a check out of his checking account. But my husband wasn't here anymore to do that for me. And it hits you once again how much you miss them. And one more thing, just one more thing, But no time to be sad, no time to grieve. We got to keep going. And then continuous phone calls kept coming in the following days. Different phone calls about his doctor's appointments and different things. And I had to continually tell them he passed. So in addition to the death certificate and the obituaries being written and the program cards that had to be written, I also had to gather an outfit for my husband to be buried in. Now, I did not want to go into my husband's closet. I absolutely did not. But I finally pushed myself and I went in there. And of course, it was very emotional and very hard. And I couldn't decide on what to bury him in. Do I bury him in my favorite outfit of him wearing? Do I bury him in his favorite outfit? But actually, I want to keep both of those outfits. I don't want them to be gone. So that was a struggle. And thankfully, as I'm going through his closet and just in tears, not sure which one I was going to part with, which of his beautiful Hawaiian aloha shirts would I part with. And I came across two. He had two identical. One was beige and one was white with the same exact print. And I was like, easy. Now I only have to decide between beige and white. Which one do I want to keep? Because they're identical. And that was a struggle right there. Luckily, one was a small and one was a large. And my husband, because he was so sick, he had lost a lot of weight and he was definitely a small. So that decision was made for me. One less thing for me to have to worry about. So I got the outfit together. And in addition, I had to gather the photos and things that, to bury him with. I didn't bury him with anything of value, like his wedding ring and all that. I kept that. I don't see any point in burying him with that, but I did bury him with photos of us and love notes I wrote to him after his passing. The love letters that I wrote after his passing. Any of the sweet love letters that I wrote to him before he passed, I'm keeping those for sure. So anything that I put in the casket with him were almost duplicates and new things, not anything that has a lot of emotional, sentimental value. Because again, that was hard. So then I sat there and I figured out what to put on the program cards, things like that. Put it in the put the obituary in the newspaper. Don't put it in the newspaper. I was getting different messages from different people. Ultimately, I decided not to put it in the paper. And one would think that, okay, that's all taken care of. Now can I grieve? But no, not yet. Because after we do the services, graveside services, generally you have something afterwards. So we did a celebration of life afterwards. Thankfully, the church offered their facility no charge. So I had to just plan everything else, and not really plan, but I had to buy everything else. So I went down and ordered the sandwiches and things like that, ordered all the food. And then I went to the dollar store and I purchased all these purple plates and napkins and cups and white tablecloths. And as I'm leaving, I don't remember much about the dollar store trip, but as I'm leaving, I remember this distinctly. The woman said, "Oh, you're going to have a great party. Have fun." And my heart just sank. I was like, it's for my husband's funeral. And she kind of laughed. I don't know. She probably did she just say? She probably questioned oh, what did I just do? But then I just walked out. So I'm still not quite done with the business side of things and taking care of those things. I needed to get a guest book. I needed photos. I need to gather the photos and print those to put out as celebration of life. And I needed to gather some of his personal belongings, his treasured mementos to put out at the celebration of life table for all his loved ones to see. And again, I went into business mode and I got these things done. And I am so, so thankful for the friends and family that pitched in and helped me with doing some of those things as well. Finally, all the planning of things was done. And I had a moment to grieve by myself the week before his funeral. This entire time I had been struggling with nausea, not feeling well. I've never, ever had those problems. but it was the weirdest thing, feeling nauseous and just not well. And it wasn't like a food poisoning nausea. It was the weirdest kind of nausea I've never ever felt in my life. And the only thing I could think of, it had to be due to extreme stress or overwhelm. So here we are. We're at the graveside service, lining up. I'm behind the hearse, and I'm seeing all my friends and family, all our loved ones showing up. And I get out of the car to greet them, and immediately this man comes up and asks if I was the wife, and I was like, yes. And he needed to talk to me. He needed me to sign this, do this, read this, and fill out the information to put on his headstone. I was like, what? Like, I don't know. You have 23 characters, 2 lines, blah, blah, blah. I was stunned. In 10 minutes, we were going to be driving over to the gravesite to do the service, and he wanted me to do all this, and I was like, okay, let me take the paper and I'll do it. And he says, you only have 3 days and it's got to be done. I said, okay, I'll take care of it. And then I told him I would come back the next day, because I was just like, this is too much. This is too much. Like, this business side of everything is just crazy. Absolutely crazy. And then within moments, the person who was in charge of the services and making sure everything went smoothly, she comes up to me and says, okay, sign here. You didn't fill it out, and we're just going to keep it a blank headstone. Just have his name on it. If you don't return that paperwork in 3 days. I was like, what? It's a business. It is their business, and I understand that. But right there, graveside, you couldn't even give me that moment? No, there was the business side of things that had to be done. So we get to the graveside. Services were absolutely beautiful. They played taps, which is emotional. They did the gun salute. They presented me with the flag that had been over his casket the whole time. And I had prepared myself emotionally for the presentation of the flag, because I knew that was emotionally going to be difficult for me. So I held it together pretty well. And then the coordinator lady that is in charge of the services, at the end, she comes up to me and she has all these shell casings and she hands them to me from the gun salute. And it was like, at that point, I was like, I did not plan for that part. I didn't know they did that. And it really caught me off guard, and it was very emotional. But I had all those things, and I'm holding it. And thankfully, my friends were there to help me hold it together, and my family was there to help me hold it all together. And then from there, we drove to the celebration of life, and the pastor and another lady had set up everything beautiful from the church. Everything was so nice. And we gathered and we shared wonderful stories about my husband, and ate, and it was hard, but it was very nice. It was nice to hear the wonderful stories about my husband. So we get through the burial and the celebration of life, and okay, that's done. But remember, I now have to go back the next day to drop off that piece of paper that I couldn't wrap my mind around filling out. So I take my paper that they had given me and drive down there. And that was really hard to see where he was buried. But I ran into this wonderful lady. Her husband had passed like a month before my husband, and she was an older lady. And we talked, and she was so wonderful and so pleasant. And she was sharing with me what they chose to put on their headstone and why they chose that. And she was also from Hawaii, like my husband, so that was great talking to her. Her name was Jean, and her husband was John. And he's buried just a few rows up from my husband. So then I went and I turned in the paperwork. I filled out what I was given at least, some time to think and digest. And what are the 23 characters that I wanted to put on the headstone, my 2 rows of 23 characters. And I did all that and I turned my paperwork in. But the business side doesn't stop there. Nope, not at all. There's still more business side to take care of. Now the death certificate's in. I need to contact banks. I need to contact Social Security. I need to contact the car insurance, everything. I need to contact all these people, and I'm probably missing some people. I don't know. Maybe I didn't need to contact the car insurance company now that I'm thinking about it. Because note to self, after I dropped him from the car insurance policy, my premiums actually went up. And I actually thought they would go down because, not to dish on my husband, but he was a much worse driver than I am by far. But I think he would admit that too. But it went up. And when I asked them, why did it go up? They said, because now I have 2 cars and only 1 driver, and they don't have an assigned driver to the second car. So don't call the auto insurance company. Just wait, I guess, is my suggestion, as long as you can. When your loved one passes, the world keeps going. And even though your world is shattered, there's all these things that have to be done. And the best advice I can give is to take it one day at a time and don't worry about tomorrow. Take care of what you can take care of today. And then tomorrow, take care of what you can take care of the next day. If you have suggestions you'd like to share, because there's still business things that keep popping up. There's still things that have to be done, and I probably missed some things, I'm sure. As things start settling down now, and my mind maybe is a little more clear, I would love for you to leave in the comments if there's anything that maybe I'm missing. Is there something else I need to do? What other part of this business side do I need to take care of? Is there anything else I need to do? If you've watched any of my other videos, you will know that I dreaded being solo. I did not want to be solo. I enjoyed being married. And I miss my husband daily, absolutely daily. And it seems like during the day, I usually can keep myself pretty busy and I'm okay. And it's the evening. Every evening, it seems at the same exact time, I fall apart and I can't stop crying. And for now, I'm letting myself cry because I feel a little bit better afterwards. I don't know how long I'll continue to let myself just have a tear fest about the same time every evening, because I think that was like more the time that we would get together and we would have our dinner together and watch shows together. And, during the day we're working, we're doing what we needed to get done. But the evenings I'm finding are very, very hard. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to follow my journey, please subscribe. And if you want to know what grief feels like, I suggest you watch this video here. Or join me in the video that YouTube thinks you'd enjoy. I look forward to seeing you in the next video and in the comments below. Goodbye for now.